Now, and you've talked about some of the roles of the lieutenant governor as we've been talking. One of those roles is to break a tie in the Senate, if there is one. So I want to talk about some of the issues that may be important to Missourians. One of which is health care, and you've mentioned that a little bit here this morning. But how would you work to bring health care to more Missourians in the state?
Well, the lieutenant governor's role is bully pulpit. It's an advocacy role. And in addition to the raw power of the position, the lieutenant governor's job is to get out there and build coalitions among advocacy groups and bring them to the Capitol and lobby for what they think is important. No one can argue that the lieutenant governor cannot be a powerful lobbyist for interests that are important, that would be important to that person. And what we saw just last year, the current lieutenant governor was able to lobby and push through a $100 million tax credit for one developer, for one person. Now, can you imagine what you could do if you could bring together all the advocacy groups that were upset about the cuts to health care in Missouri? And I think we'd be able to turn this around, and we're going to need an organization like that.
Let's move to the economy now, and we've heard a lot about how Missourians have lost jobs over the past year. What would you do working with the governor to bring economic growth back to the state of Missouri?
Well, I would divide that into two categories. First, there are workforce development issues. Do we have a workforce that's ready to go to work? Are they educated? Do we have strong universities and strong public schools so people who graduate from high school can get a good job with benefits, and that college access to college is affordable? And can kids growing up in Missouri go to college in Missouri and graduate with a degree that has value and they're able to fill some of the new technical jobs that we're hoping will be part of our new economy in Missouri? I think the second part of that is that we need to have good health care services. If kids can't see a doctor when they're sick, they can't learn. If companies don't believe that there's going to be a good underlying health care system, they're not going to bring jobs to Missouri, because these sort of benefits are important for people who want to bring jobs here. You've got to have good workforce development. Now, the second part of all of this is that the government, the state government and federal government, can incentivize people to bring jobs to Missouri. But you have to make sure those incentives are given to companies that are bringing jobs to Missouri and are not giving them to companies who take jobs out of Missouri. Now, for example, when the Bombardier project was before the House this year, it was at that time a proposal for an $800 million tax credit to bring a French-Canadian company to Missouri. It was certainly an interesting proposal. I had an amendment in the House that if that company would take those jobs out of Missouri, then we would be able to get back the tax credits. They would have to repay those tax credits to the state. And I sponsored that amendment on the House floor, and unfortunately that amendment was voted down on a party line vote. And it lost, and the bill went over to the Senate without any of those clawback provisions to return those tax credits to the state if that company came to Missouri and then took those jobs out. Now, in the end, the company never came to Missouri, and we never got to test that proposal. But I feel very strongly that if we incentivize companies to any sort of tax credits to companies to bring jobs to Missouri, we need to be able to get those tax credits back if they take those jobs out of Missouri.
What are some of the other things you can do to give them incentives to keep the jobs in the state of Missouri rather than taking them out?
Well, there are a dozen tax credit programs, and they're all, some of them are tax abatement, some of them return a portion of new income tax. If they bring in new jobs, sometimes we'll let them keep some of the income tax that those new jobs would have brought into Missouri and to do some of their infrastructure development or other land development in their areas, try and make it a little bit easier. We're talking about incentives that give them back some of the new revenue that would not be in the state if those companies did not move to the state. And there are various ways to do that through tax abatement programs.
You've talked a little bit about where you and your opponent disagree, but are there any other specific issues where you feel that you differ from your opponent in this election?
Well, I don't support voucher programs, and he's been a strong advocate of voucher programs. I'm strongly opposed Governor Blunt's health care cuts, and he has been campaigning that those health care cuts were a good idea, and they should have happened. I sponsored an amendment to require companies that take jobs out of Missouri, to return tax credits, turn the tax credit money back to Missouri if they leave. He didn't think that was important. I think there's a whole list of things that I think that we disagree on that are important to the mainstream values of people in Missouri.
All right. Part of being lieutenant governor is being able to work with the governor. If, of course, Nixon is elected, he's a Democrat. How would you work with him, or if Holsoff is elected, how would you work with him to get things accomplished in Missouri?
Well, Missouri is one of those states, and they're kind of divided almost evenly, states in this country that elect their lieutenant governor separately. It's a separate vote from the governor. Some of our surrounding states don't do that. They run in a ticket. For example, Illinois and Kansas, governor and lieutenant governor run together. Obviously, my priorities are much more in line with Jay Nixon's. It would be easier for Jay to govern if I were his lieutenant governor, and it would be more rewarding for me to be a lieutenant governor for someone who I agreed with. If Jay is not the lieutenant, if Jay Nixon is not governor, and that's a scenario that a lot of people don't believe is possible at this point in time because of Jay's enormous support in the state. But if Kenny Holsoff were to be elected governor, then I would work with him on the things that we agree on. And if he does something to take the state in the wrong direction, for example, tries to cut health care for 400,000 people, then I would stand up as a state senior advocate and say that's wrong.
All right, is there anything else that you'd like to add that I haven't asked you about this morning?
Well, I'm very excited about the opportunity to serve as lieutenant governor in Missouri. It's an advocacy role. It's what I've been doing my entire life. I went to medical school and became a doctor to help people. I ran for office for the same reason, and I'm very excited about this opportunity.
All right, thank you very much for coming in this morning.
Thank you for having me on your show.
About it.
Thank you.